everyone, and welcome to Articulating with David Barnett. This is the David Barnett Gallery podcast, episode 15. My name is Sharon Locher, and of course, with me is my co-host and gallery owner and director, David Barnett himself.
Hello.
Today we have a very special and interesting topic. This all started, I think it was about a year or so ago. I received a phone call from a gentleman wanting to bring a few paintings in for an appraisal. And he brought one in, and to our surprise, we heard a very interesting story. The present owner of the artwork behind us, which is a Marilyn Monroe panel by Andy Warhol, he started telling David and I how he inherited the piece from his brother-in-law. Well, his brother-in-law was a priest and was friends with one of Warhol's nephews, who was also with the church. And he proceeded to tell the story about how his brother-in-law, back in, I believe, the 60s or 70s, was with Warhol's nephew. They had gone to New York to the factory because Warhol's nephew was being helped out by his very famous uncle. And so they went to the factory because he was going to get some money from his uncle. Well, Warhol was not there, but the nephew did have keys to the factory. So they entered, and being upset that his uncle wasn't there and he couldn't get the money he needed, he proceeded to cut 3 panels out of a large Marilyn Monroe canvas. He then cut those up, rolled them up, stuck them in his pocket. He ended up giving one of them to the current owner's brother-in-law. I believe gave him $10 for it back in the 60s. So that is what we have here today. So it's kind of a crazy story. So we did go through it, of course. We did the appraisal, and then we archivally framed it. And now we're in the process of, it's on consignment here at the gallery.
My history with Andy Warhol, when I first opened the gallery in 1966, my first trip to New York, I went into the Leo Castelli gallery and I bought a Marilyn silkscreen print from the signed and numbered edition. And at that time it was about 1967, I believe. And so Leo Castelli represented Andy Warhol at that time. I bought it for $400.
Wow.
And when I started the gallery, I actually had a partner who went to New York with me. And the partnership, fortunately for me, only lasted a couple of weeks. And I realized that this person that I had partnered with was not going to work out. So we severed our relationship, and so he said he wanted the Andy Warhol, so he paid me for it. So he has that now. Since then, the Andy Warhol market has just exploded.
Yes.
And even that print now, that $400 print, is worth about $500,000. I had a Warhol print back then of Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
That I sold again, 50 some years ago for about $2,500, and that print today is selling for about $125,000. So the market's exploded. So in 2022, Christie's in New York sold this Marilyn screen print on canvas, sold at auction for $196 million. I'll repeat that, $196 million.
Yes, the most expensive Warhol ever.
Right. Now, as a professional art appraiser since 1975, we have to consider not my personal preferences or interests or personal opinions. It's based on comparables in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting to me with Warhol is the fact that these pieces that are selling for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars are screen prints
Yes.
on canvas.
Yeah, they're not actual paintings.
They are hand painted,
Yeah.
but the essence and the basics of them are screen prints. And that is a phenomenon that we've seen with no other artist other than Andy Warhol. But the piece that went for $196 million
Mm-hmm.
was from 1964,
Yes.
and the piece that we have is circa 1962.
Correct.
So, as art historians, we all know that the first time and the earlier pieces that an artist does are the most important.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a technical standpoint, we could argue that our piece is more important than the $196 million piece in terms of the date of it, right?
Yes, yeah, because it does date to 2 years earlier.
Yeah, but there are a lot of similarities in terms of the colors and so on and so forth.
Well, compared to other Warhols, I mean, it doesn't have bear his signature.
Correct.
However,
the provenance is impeccable.
The provenance is impeccable. I mean, we have it coming directly from the factory. And I believe there was another priest who was able to verify some of the story, I believe, that from the present owner. He kind of wrote down the whole backstory for us and was able to get some people that had witnessed this, back in the 60s. The other thing, too, I think that makes it interesting, when I was going through and doing the research for the actual appraisal, before sitting down and meeting with David, who then, of course, establishes the estimate for it, I managed to find another Marilyn, very similar, same color scheme, from around that same time period, which is actually now owned by the family of the gentleman who cut this one out. So it is owned by his children, I believe, was what it said. And this is actually listed in the catalog raisonné. So we were able to pretty definitively tie it back to Warhol and the factory, and it's pretty safe to say we know that this is a Warhol. Plus, it also bears a lot of his kind of signature trademarks. For as famous as he is, he's also infamous with some of his screen printing for it being kind of off. Things don't always align perfectly. And as you can see here, on the right side, it's not as heavily printed as on the left. So again, this was probably an earlier, we could safe to say, by the color scheme and the date of which it was taken and all that. And not just that, but of course the look of it, to ascertain that it was an early work.
And so you have the orange and the yellow were hand painted.
Yes, you can actually see the brush
acrylic,
marks.
right? Exactly. Yeah. Whereas the background blue was screen printed. You can tell from the technique. Yeah. So.
Yes, and like some of the other Marilyns from this time too. Some of these later ones, as we can see, like in the shot sage blue Marilyn. I confused it earlier. I think I said sage blue shot Marilyn. She has earrings here. It's a little more defined in terms of her hair. Everything is kind of aligned a little better with her lipstick and eyeshadow. But these earlier ones, We don't always have the earrings. There is this very simple piece, this kind of, I don't know if it's a collar from a shirt. And again, things are like the lipstick is not perfectly aligned with her mouth. The coloring's just kind of slightly askew. So we see that in these earlier Marilyns that were made by Andy Warhol, and of course we see it in this one.
Yeah, and of course, for any potential collector, the most iconic image is, of course, the Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, that is absolutely its most famous.
Yeah, so you can't really find anything any better than this in the marketplace, really. So it's really the best value. And so in terms of Marilyn Monroe, I'm not sure what year it was, a number of years ago, I did some checking, and in terms of the commercialism of her image, which of course is what this is all about.
Yes.
Her estate, I believe, collected like $44 million in royalties for the licensing rights to use her image on different products.
Sure.
Yeah, and so this image has been compared. I mean, it's perhaps the most important icon in modern times. Where historians are comparing it to Da Vinci's Mona Lisa.
I was just going to say, she is very much a modern day Mona Lisa. The mystery surrounding the Mona Lisa, and just that, to reuse the word enduring, that enduring appeal, excitement, that love for that painting, it can all be attributed to the Marilyn images as well. And obviously evidenced by what you were just sharing in terms of her estate still bringing in millions of dollars in licensing. That continues to play out. I mean, people still, even these younger generations, still know who she is. You know, she's the epitome of the American sex symbol, and I don't think that will ever really dissipate.
No.
It's got a lot of historic value, not just in the image of Marilyn, but in the fact that it was created by Andy Warhol, who is arguably, I would say, probably one of the best, if not the best known American artist of the 20th century.
Definitely.
You know, he's absolutely a household name. I think people that are even, that are unfamiliar with art or artists all know his name.
Yeah.
Another thing I was able to find out in the research was that Warhol did actually pay for the religious schooling of this nephew. And so that just kind of strengthened the backstory a little more, as well as, their relationship.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting, too, to find out that Warhol was quite religious. I know he was born and raised Catholic. I didn't realize that he consistently went to church and felt very strongly about Catholicism. He always kind of kept that part of his life separated, obviously, from the factory and what was going on there, which was about as far away from religion as you could get. But, he definitely clung to those ideals and beliefs throughout his life, and what's very important to him. So it's kind of befitting that he should pay for his nephew's.
And not everybody knows that his real Polish name was Warhol.
Yes.
And that was his nephew's name.
Yeah, his nephew's last name was Warhol as well. So it's actually the family members that do own some of his artwork. They're all part of the Warhol family.
Right.
Oh, should we talk about pop art in general a little bit? Having had out with your experiences over the years.
I did get from the kitchen this morning.
Oh, the Lichtenstein.
Roy Lichtenstein's Crying Girl. I actually spoke to Roy Lichtenstein on the phone before he passed away His niece actually lived in Milwaukee, and when she got married, she received a painting from Uncle Roy
Oh, wow.
for a wedding gift, and then she got divorced, so she brought me the painting to sell for the part of the divorce settlement. And so she came in to the gallery, and I said, well, could you give me Uncle Roy's phone number? I'd like to discuss it with him. So she gave me his phone number, and I called him, and he answered his phone. And very down to earth person, and very humble, and it was a great conversation. So
Okay, that in itself is just way too cool. That just one day his niece walks into the gallery, next thing you know, you're on the phone with Roy Lichtenstein, another extremely famous pop artist.
yeah,
One of the things that makes pop art so popular in general, and something that people love about it, besides the kind of playfulness of it, the bright colors associated with it, is just the iconography, whether it be something like Marilyn or you mentioned earlier Mick Jagger, the use of soup cans or barrel boxes, or, with Lichtenstein, these kind of cartoonish imagery. There's almost a nostalgia to it, I think, that it invokes for many people, and it just always kind of looks really cool. No matter who the artist is, there's just this cool factor to it that you don't find in other art movements. Not saying that other art movements aren't cool, because trust me, there are plenty that are, but there's just something about pop art that really makes it different and very unique. And today is actually Fernand Léger. I could never get
Léger.
Léger, thank you. I can never pronounce it correctly. It's his birthday, and he is considered kind of a forerunner of pop art, which I never heard before. I can see it looking at some of his work, especially because of the bright colors and the imagery, and again, that kind of playfulness. And he was using some, famous iconography. He actually has a piece that does have the Mona Lisa in it. A few other things like that he kind of played around with. But I thought that was kind of cool. Kind of ties back into what we're talking about today. So that's one of the, I think, fascinating things about art, and really about any type of culture, if you get into it, music, fashion. Different movements and time periods are always influenced by those that came before them, whether directly or indirectly. Again, they just continue to fascinate us and bring us a lot of joy, like this lovely Marilyn here.
right.
So,
Well, good.
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching and listening to our story about how this Warhol came to be in the David Barnett Gallery. If you'd like to come see it, if you have any more questions, or you're interested in purchasing it, please come on down to the gallery. We are open Tuesday through Saturdays. And until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.